Americans are spending less and worrying more. Consumer sentiment rose less than forecast last month, while retail sales fell flat.
For a ground-level look at the state of the American consumer, let's bring in Jim McCann, the founder and executive chairman of 1-800-Flowers.com. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here.
So tell us, how is the consumer?
I think the consumer is doing fine, at least from our perspective. Now, we deal mostly with affluent consumers at 1-800-Flowers and across our brands. But, you know, I was listening to your other segment. I'm a Main Street kind of guy, hardly a Wall Street kind of guy, but I think the consumer is doing better all the time. I think we're finding it harder and harder to hire people. I think that's good for the overall economy, tougher for us. So those are the headwinds we face, but the consumer seems to be doing fine. In the previous segment, you talked about, Anthony, you asked, is gridlock good for the economy? For the last couple of years, when you've had gridlock, we're struggling to get to 2% growth, but if you put it in contrast to the rest of the world, that's pretty good. I think if we had a little better regulatory environment and a little less handcuffs on us, we could see this economy grow at 4%, and that's without any great change in fiscal policy.
So what's one or two regulations that you'd like to see the government do away with to help us get there, Jim?
Well, I think Kevin, in your last segment, talked about the tax rates and what's going on in London, what's already happened in Dublin. Clearly, lowering the tax rate stimulates the economy. I have concerns on several levels about artificial changes to the minimum wage. What I mean by artificial, by mandate, by edict. There's already a lot of pressure on wages that are happening naturally, and if you have artificial changes, like in one city or in one state, it tends to disrupt the economy. So I think a change in the tax rate at the corporate level would be important and stimulative. Rather than punishing companies who try and manage their tax rates, let's do it by good fiscal policy.
You're about to celebrate your 40th year as the founder of 1-800-Flowers. Over the course of the 4 decades, has this been a difficult time for you on a relative basis or an easier time?
Easier. Easier because our brands are all solid. We're a vertically integrated company. We're appropriate. We have a terrific customer base, so we've accumulated great assets that give us flexibility. And Chris, in managing the company now, has kept us in the forefront of convenience commerce using technology. And you saw some signs of that in the last couple of months, where we had big deals with Amazon, a big deal with Facebook, a big deal with IBM Watson, with Uber. So we're always staying on the forefront of changes in technology that make it more convenient for our customers to access our products and services.
You know, Jim, I'm surprised. I hear a lot of bankers, I hear a lot of Wall Street people come on and they say this is the worst environment to try to start a business.
I'm very glad I'm not a banker.
Yeah, but because you're actually starting a business, running a business, and building a business. So if you had to start the company right now in what has been described as a terrible regulatory environment, you could do it today the same way you did 40 years ago?
I don't know if it'd be the same way, Gary. I hope I've learned a lot in those 40 years. I think the financing environment is much better than it was. 40 years ago, we didn't use the term entrepreneur. That was a guy who couldn't get a job at a big company. So I think the culture and the environment and the society have morphed and celebrated and embracing entrepreneurship. So I think it's a much better and healthier environment now, with more infrastructure to help support the formation of businesses, help them to overcome the barriers that regulation puts in front of them.
But if you were starting the company now and you had to go to a bank and try to borrow money, yes, interest rates are much lower.
Yes.
But do you think you'd be able to, with your credit and your background, be able to borrow the money?
As a small business, no.
Okay.
No.
So there's one thing that you think needs a major change.
As we've grown to be a medium-sized business, a small to medium-sized business, the banking environment is very good for us because rates are low. I love that everyone tells the banks, have more reserves, lend more money, make less money, don't take any risk. There seems to be a conflict in those mandates pushed to the banks. As a small business person, we benefit from the rate environment. And frankly, when I hear you talk about the Fed rates, I wish they'd raise it a quarter already so I don't have to hear you guys talking about it all the time.
It's a good point, and I wish they would. Talk about the entrepreneur and the advice that you would give to an entrepreneur today or to yourself, your younger version of yourself from 40 years ago.
Well, I think what we try and do in our business, which we hope is still entrepreneurial, is look at what's happening, where the changes are. Where is technology changing a business? We use the word disrupt, but it's not always disruptive. It's just, sometimes it's just evolutionary. And, you know, if you look at, you know, taxis have been around for a long time, but a software overlay on that has changed the world with Uber and Lyft and others. So I'd look for a business that could be changed or made more convenient or cheaper for consumers, and that's where I try and enter.
Jim, great insight. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Gary, always good to be with you and Anthony.